Every horror story has one question hiding underneath it. Would you survive? Would you be able to run fast enough? Would you hide well enough? Would you somehow be smart enough, white enough, brave enough, ruthless enough to survive whatever horror in a horror movie would be presented to you? Would you know not to go into the basement? Would you ignore the voice in the woods? Would you keep your phone charged? Would you make the right choices at the right time and be rewarded for it? Would you be the stupid protagonist in every horror movie that the audience is yelling at? Or would you be the smart one people are rooting for? Horror loves that question because it makes survival feel a little bit personal. It turns survival into a personality test. But there is another question horror almost never wants to ask. What kind of body was survival actually written for? Because when horror asks if you would survive, it usually imagines a very specific kind of person. A person who can run, who can climb, who can crawl through vents, sleep on the floor, keep moving for hours and hours, go without medication, somehow, surprisingly, ignore their pain, hear danger coming, see a little bit good in the dark, hold their breath, stay awake, and recover from injury just because the plot needs them to keep going. Horror calls that survival. If you ask me, I would call it something else. I would call it just a little bit ableist. Because, well, chronically ill and disabled people wouldn't survive the horror movies that everybody else gets to inhabit. That, ultimately, is the fantasy. Because survival is not always about bravery. I know we like to imagine it is, but it's more than that. Sometimes survival is about whether you packed enough medication, whether there's a bathroom nearby, whether the elevator works. Are the lights going to trigger a migraine, a seizure, a pain flare? Is there somewhere to sit down before your body stops asking politely and just collapses? Are there people around you who could help you? Whether anyone around you believes you when you say, I cannot keep going like this. And that is why the Backrooms are such a useful horror text. Because the Backrooms are not only scary because there might be something in them. The Backrooms are scary because they are a world without care built into it. Endless rooms, annoying fluorescent lights, wet carpet. I don't know why wet carpet is a very specific motif of the Backrooms, but if it's anything like wet socks, we don't want anything like that. Wet socks are gross. No windows, no clear exits, no reliable map, no medicine, no better bathroom, no safe place to stop. The Backrooms are horror as architecture. And if you're disabled or chronically ill, architecture is forever and always never neutral. Architecture is either, well, that was a pleasant experience, I can't believe they included it, or they are desperately trying not to scream because what do you mean the only ramp that this place has built into it is the ramp where they pull the trash in and out? It has a very specific feeling when that's the only ramp. A hallway is never just a hallway. A staircase is never just a staircase. And a broken elevator is not just an inconvenience, it is one OSHA violation away from being sued into the ground. And a locked bathroom is not just annoying, sometimes it is actually life and death because some people need to get into the bathroom for specific things that have to do with their medication or their illness. A lack of seating is not just poor design. Well, I mean, it is poor design, you're kind of an asshole if you do it, but it's not just poor design. These things decide who gets to exist in public and who is quietly told over and over again that the world was not built for them in mind. I am chronically ill and disabled. I could tell you with certainty that I know the world isn't designed with me in mind. I have had to, on several occasions, realize that if I want to get to the next spot to sit down, I'm going to have to beat somebody who is very able-bodied to the chair. I very rarely beat somebody who is able-bodied to the chair. So, in this video, I want to talk about the Backrooms as more than just internet horror. For the record, this is a in-between video. They'll come up every now and again when I have something to say or something's bothering me while I'm working on the longer form projects I told you I was working on, like my Mononoke movie video, my Death Note video, the Penny Dreadful video, and also, man, I have so many of these. My very long form Studio Ghibli project video, that one do not expect anytime soon. I'm being serious. These are the in-betweens. The back rooms, you could say, of all my other stuff going on. Quick, quippy little things that I want to talk about, because I just want to make sure that you know the person who runs this channel didn't miraculously get sent to an insane asylum. I was busy doing other stuff. Research takes a long time, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I say these are quick videos. These also have research behind them, they're just not as in-depth. Any hoosers. I want to talk about why this kind of horror makes sense now, in this here and now. Why newer generations are obsessed with liminal space, dead malls, abandoned buildings, and urban exploration. Why the Backrooms feel like they were born from dying retail space that seemed to loop forever under artificial light, and why when we look at this horror through chronic illness and disability, the Backrooms become something even more frightening. They become a world where the only body allowed to survive is a body no human being actually has. A body that never hurts, never tires, never stops, never needs anything. And maybe that's the real horror. Not the monster at the end of the hallway itself. The Backrooms did not come from nowhere. They were not spawned from nothing. Just like the Big Bang, they came from something painfully familiar. They came from dying malls. Specifically, dying malls, empty office parks, furniture stores, abandoned department stores, carpeted hallways behind the employee-only bathrooms, fluorescent rooms with no windows, employee-only corridors, those tacky fake plants that seem to pepper everything in the world, and escalators still running for customers who no longer came. They came from spaces that were not ancient enough to feel gothic, a la a Victorian mansion or a crumbling castle, but not alive enough to feel safe either. That's what makes the Backrooms feel different from older horror spaces. A haunted castle tells you it is haunted. You just look at it and you're like, there's a ghost. I know it. I don't even have to go in. I could tell some spooky shit lives in there. You don't have to go very far. A graveyard tells you it belongs to the dead. Their houses are littered all over the place if you go to a graveyard. It's very obvious. A Victorian mansion has history baked into the walls. It has portraits, family secrets, inherited sin, dead wives, always dead wives, locked rooms, blood underneath the floorboards, and a fuck ton of asbestos. So much asbestos. But the Backrooms don't look like that. Not even a little bit. They look like work. They look like retail and furniture showrooms after everybody went home. They look like the hallway behind the JCPenney, which went out of business forever ago. They look like the mall after the future left and didn't leave a forwarding address to wherever it is it was going. And that matters because for a lot of younger people, malls were already ghosts by the time they were old enough to understand what they were supposed to be. Older generations got the mall as a social world. People went there after school, after work, for movies, for clothes, for shopping, for community. Fast forward into the younger generation, and the younger generation inherited the mall as a ghost that still has opinions and also sometimes still has like 3 people working in it. Bare minimum, at least 3. They inherited the food court where only 2 restaurants were somehow miraculously were still open. The dead fountain that has never had any water in their living memory. The store directory full of names that are already gone. Shops and things that used to be there from yesteryear but are no longer here. Boarded up, moved out, dead. The wide, shining halls with no crowd moving through them, the display couches no one sat on, and the department store that looked like it should have been full of life, but instead felt like a play rehearsing its own funeral. The haunting comes from the fact that the lights are still on, the music is still playing, the corridors and escalators still exist, still breathe. The echoes of things that used to be are littered everywhere inside, but the place has already lost something, and that feeling is all over the Backrooms. The Backrooms are not scary because they are completely alien. In fact, the Backrooms feel shockingly familiar to a lot of people is because other than the 3 or 4 stores in the mall, and maybe one mall that has like the movie theater attached to it, I don't know if other malls have. The mall I live near, they have a movie theater attached to it. People go into the mall to buy time before or after the movie that they bought the ticket for, assuming they don't get there when they want to get there, but most malls just are there. They feel like places we've been to, but entirely emptied of their original purpose. It's like remembering something wrong. That's one of the central powers of liminal horror. A liminal space is just a threshold. It's a place between places. A hallway, a stairwell, a waiting room, a school after hours, a hotel corridor, an airport gate at 3 in the morning. As somebody who's been at the airport at 3 in the morning waiting on a flight, I don't recommend it. You start to get aggravated because there's a million people leaving and yet your plane somehow is late. No one else in the world is alive right now, and yet somehow your plane is late. That's not what this is about. These are spaces you are not meant to stay in. You pass through them on the way to somewhere else. But in liminal horror, the threshold becomes the destination. The hallway does not lead anywhere. The waiting room never calls your name. The mall just keeps fucking going. The office never opens, and the furniture showroom loops back on itself until the fake rooms begin to feel more real than the world outside. The Backrooms take this ordinary unease and make it infinite. But turn the in-between into a prison, and all of a sudden, you have the next best horror blockbuster on your hands. And that's why the Dead Mall matters so much. Because the Dead Mall is basically already kind of the Backrooms for free. You don't have to pay to go see the movie. Just go walk around the mall for 2 hours. You'll get your kicks. It's already a place built for human activity but emptied of human life. A place where every bench, storefront, fountain, sign, escalator, and display case insisted people should be here, even when they were not. A place where the architecture still remembered a crowd that had already packed up and gone home. But the Backrooms are what happens when that feeling becomes a world. Not a haunted house, not a spooky Victorian mansion, not a crumbling castle in the middle of nowhere. A haunted commercial space. It's not even an ancient curse. It's not something that happened by accident because somebody screwed something up. It's just recent abandonment. Not the past refusing to die is even the problem. It's the present failing to stay alive. And I think that's more important to this discussion than people seem to think, because urban exploration is pilgrimage into the ruins of something that literally existed less than 20 years ago. Now, I'm 32. 20 years ago, I was 12. I remember as a kid a bunch of places that I used to be allowed to go to that just don't exist anymore. I can't talk about these places with my nieces and nephews because they think I'm lying to them. They don't know what I'm talking about. The places of yesteryear I remember very vividly just don't exist. And if they do exist, they exist as catchy little TikToks of people wandering into places that are just abandoned. And this is why urban exploration fits so naturally besides Backrooms horror. Because if the Backrooms are the internet's dream of dead architecture, urban exploration is what happens when people go looking for something kind of close to the real thing. Abandoned malls, closed schools, empty hospitals, hotels left to rot, office buildings that for some reason they found a way into. I don't know why people think office buildings are not on a grid that still has cameras that are recording you, but whatever. Factories, random tunnels that they find, even some theme parks that they've found. The places capitalism built, used, neglected, and then left behind. Urban exploration is not just about trespassing for a thrill, but let's be real, the thrill is obviously part of it. It's about entering places that were supposed to be ordinary and finding them transformed into something sacred, rotten, wrong. It's about walking through the remains of a world that promised permanence and then quietly failed. For younger generations, urban exploration often feels like archaeology without the distance of time and paperwork that tells them they are not allowed to go there. Truth be told, the idea of urban exploration sounds interesting in theory because you're not technically digging up ancient ruins or finding ancient mummified curses that are going to make the game Jumanji very, very real. We've had enough of that. Please put that back wherever you got it from. It's not technically digging somebody up from their grave and parading them around and saying, nope, it's totes archaeology and not grave robbing. It's just digging up ancient ruins that people ditched. There's graffiti on the walls. Who's coming back for this? They're walking through places where people bought school clothes in 1998. They're filming the food court where someone had their first date forever ago. They're standing inside a department store where the perfume counters, changing rooms, and checkout lanes still look almost usable if you ignore the mold and the water damage. Specifically the mold. Please don't touch the mold. The mold is toxic. Don't do that. This is not ancient history. 1998 was not that long ago. But for kids born now, that's basically one whole lifetime away. And it's just enough history that they can understand what they're looking at. It's recent history with mold and graffiti and lost promises plastered all over the place. And I think that's part of the appeal. Urban exploration lets people touch the ruins they inherited. It lets them document the collapse in a way that feels intimate. The abandoned mall is not just a failed business. It's a corpse. A social corpse. It's evidence that the world adults promised was stable, but was never actually that stable. There's something almost ritualistic about it. They enter the dead building, they film the empty hallways. You whisper, even though no one's there. Why are you whispering? Do you think there's a ghost running around that's going to get aggravated that you kids are here at 2:30 in the morning and you're waking it up? I seriously doubt it. You point your flashlight at the signs of ordinary life, a chair, a poster, a children's play area, a broken vending machine. So many broken vending machines, Jesus. A mattress, a forgotten menu, a creepy mannequin with one arm missing. There's always a creepy mannequin. I found very few of these urban exploration videos that don't have creepy mannequins. And for one moment, the ruin answers back. Not with words, obviously. With atmosphere. With proof positive that it was, in fact, a place that had life. This place existed. This place mattered. This place died. Urban exploration is the physical cousin of liminal horror. It's the body entering the image. It is the internet aesthetic turned into a literal destination that, if you're brave and stupid enough, you can get to. But it's also where disability tends to sharpen the horror, because urban exploration depends on a certain kind of body. The explorer is imagined as someone who can climb fences, crawl through windows, step over broken glass, walk through mold and dust, balance on unstable floors, descend dark staircases, breathe bad air. So much water. I do not understand why people insist on making the water ripple. You guys are introducing brand new bacteria into the world. Ugh. Anyway. Hear danger coming, see in low light, and keep going even if the building becomes radically unsafe. Urban turns abandoned architecture into adventure. But disabled people know that hostile architecture does not become less hostile just because someone films it beautifully. In fact, I am disabled, I am chronically ill. Every time I see these urban exploration videos, my first and only thought is, it's all fun and games until somebody steps on a rusty nail, and then all of a sudden you've got a brand new disease that the doctors don't know how to fix. I don't know what you're going to do when that happens. But that's me. I'm looking at it at the worst case scenario, because best case scenario, you stupid fools go in, you stupid fools come out, upload a video, blah blah blah, it's fine. Worst case scenario, someone falls down an elevator shaft and you have somebody in a wheelchair and you don't know how to get them out because you didn't think that far ahead. We are on two totally different wavelengths for what you're doing. If you want to do it, more power to you. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. A broken elevator in an abandoned mall might look eerie on camera. But for a wheelchair user, the broken elevator isn't atmosphere. It's exclusion. Long, empty hallway might look cinematic. But for someone with chronic pain or fatigue, that hallway is not just a really creepy shot. It's calculation. A dark stairwell might feel thrilling to someone else, but for someone with balance issues, low vision, joint instability, asthma, or neurological symptoms, it's a literal wall. Even ruins have a default body that's allowed to run through them. Even the ruins imagine who gets to explore them. And the ruins don't picture anybody that isn't healthy and 20 and able-bodied and stupid enough to wander in. And that matters because the Backrooms are also a fantasy of exploration. They ask us to imagine moving through impossible space, surviving impossible odds, documenting impossible spaces. But the person imagined at the center of that fantasy is usually someone whose body can keep going. Someone who can walk almost forever. Someone who can run almost forever when the monster appears. Someone who can hear the buzz change in the lights and know, we gotta get out of here. Someone who can keep moving through the maze, even when it's starting to become aggravating, because it's fine, it's an adventure. Where's your sense of adventure? I forgot you hate fun. Fun's not the thing chronically ill and disabled people hate. These types of fantasies need the person at the center of them to be able to keep going and who doesn't need to stop. And for chronically ill and disabled people, that's where the horror begins, because the Backrooms are not simply abandoned. They're basically almost inaccessible from the word go. I'm going to level with you. This next part of the video, meaning this next audio section, I am going to be a little bit annoyed. And by that I mean I'm going to be a lot annoyed. Because the Backrooms are a world made entirely out of access barriers. And I'm being serious about that. Think about what is missing in the Backrooms, not about what's there. Think about what isn't there. There are no clear exits. For a horror genre, that's good. That makes it suspenseful. But there's also no windows, no bathrooms, no seating, no beds, no medicine, no food source you could trust, no clean water, no way to change medical devices, assuming you even have a spare or backup to change, no way to refrigerate insulin, no way to call for help, which again is part of the horror, that's understandable, but this also means there's no way to know how far you've even walked, no way to know how long you've been there, no way to know whether the floor will stay flat, the room will repeat, whether the hallway will fucking end, whether the light will stop buzzing, whether the carpet is safe. whether the air itself is making you sick. For an able-bodied viewer, this is frightening because it's disorienting. It's part of the mystery, it's part of the horror, it's part of the experience. For a disabled or chronically ill viewer, this is frightening because it's not even a question, it's practical. What do you mean none of this exists back here? How do you expect me to do anything? Imagine being diabetic in the Backrooms, dude. Imagine needing insulin in a place with no refrigeration, no stable meals, no clocks, no clean surfaces, and no guarantee you will ever find your way back out. That is a living nightmare because you need your insulin as a diabetic in the Backrooms. Imagine having multiple sclerosis in the Backrooms. Imagine heat sensitivity under fluorescent lights, fatigue that does not care about the plot, nerve pain, balance issues, so much balance issues, dude, oh my god, vision problems, your legs refusing to cooperate in a world that requires endless fucking walking. The Backrooms makes me mad, not because there's monsters and stuff in it. It makes me mad is because having to imagine going through this with nothing chasing me stresses me out. Because it's all fun and games until all of a sudden I can't swim in this level, I can't walk in this level. What is happening in this world? I keep going to new destinations and somehow each destination is a brand new middle finger. It's like being told fuck you in 37 different languages all at the same time. Imagine having POTS, where standing and walking too long can make your heart rate spike, your vision narrow, your body tremble, and the floor literally comes up to meet your face because, well, you're not technically standing anymore. Imagine having Crohn's or ulcerative colitis in a world with no bathroom, or epilepsy under those stupid lights that never stop flickering. Asthma in damp, moldy, carpeted mazes that probably smell like feet. Imagine having EDS, arthritis, chronic pain, long COVID, lupus, migraines, a heart condition, a mobility impairment, a sensory processing disorder. Imagine being deaf or hard of hearing in a horror world where sound is treated as the first warning sign. Or imagine being blind or low vision in a place where every room looks the fucking same, every direction is a liar, and the environment refuses to give you reliable information. Imagine being autistic in a world of buzzing lights, repeating patterns, strange textures, echoing rooms, and no controlled sensory space. I need you to imagine that you are not able-bodied and 20. I need you to imagine that this world, from the word go, is designed to screw you specifically. The Backrooms are not scary because they're empty. They're scary because they are a world with no accommodations. And the thing about accommodations is that able-bodied people often think of it as extra. It's extra. You're whining. You're complaining. You don't actually need all of this stuff. A ramp for a wheelchair user is extra. A chair for somebody who gets so quickly fatigued is you being a little bit of a drama queen. A bathroom is, you're making this about you. You know that? An elevator is an excuse. You could just use the stairs. A quiet room is, you're being overly sensitive. A break is for children because they can't walk that long. What's your excuse? Medication becomes way too personal to talk about. Pain is something that people want you to admit to, but only a little bit. Keep that private. Don't bring it up too much. And fatigue is inconvenient, because now you're slowing the whole group down. But disabled people know accommodations are not extra, are not being dramatic, are not us whining. Accommodation is the difference between being able to exist and being quietly removed from the world. So when the Backrooms remove every accommodation known to man, they reveal something that already exists in everyday life, constantly. Like, the Backrooms are not scary for people with disabilities because we live it all the time, so this is just annoying, if we're being honest. The inaccessible building, been there, done that. The broken elevator, yep, had that on a Tuesday. The public event with no seating? All the fucking time, dude. A job that says it values you until you need sick leave. There are horror stories everywhere for disabled people about this. It's not even funny. The doctor's office that has no idea what to do with the body it's supposed to treat because, well, you're having the symptoms out of order according to our fancy handy-dandy medical textbook, but I'm still having the symptoms. But they're not in order, so how are we supposed to treat you if they're out of order? I don't know, man, I didn't go to school for 12 years, that's a you problem. The venue that says it's accessible because technically there's a ramp somewhere around the back through the service entrance, past the trash cans if someone remembers to unlock the door, assuming they remember they have a ramp at all, because nobody ever thinks about it. The backrooms strip away the polite language that is omnipresent in the regular day-to-day and just straight up says, you are an inconvenience to this narrative. And they're not apologetic about it. In real life, inaccessible space pretends cruelty is just an accident. They didn't think about it. Oh, we totally forgot that you needed that. Oh, we're so sorry. Do you need that? Is it really important? Are you okay? Did we fuck up? We're sorry. Don't sit there and lie. You weren't thinking about it. Just say it. Just say it. In the back rooms, the cruelty is the design. And this is where horror becomes more than metaphor. Because for disabled people, architecture already has teeth. A staircase can be a monster. A hallway can be a monster. A locked bathroom can be a monster. A room with no chair can be a monster. A world that says keep moving can be a monster when your body is begging you to stop. Backrooms just make the monster visible. Like I said, it's not that they forgot to be accommodating to you. They're just nice enough to look you in the eye and say, I wasn't really worried if you could get around or not. One of the cruelest things horror does is make rest impossible. In horror, stopping is death. If you sit down, the monster catches you. If you sleep, you become vulnerable. If you ask the group to slow down, you become a burden. If you say, I can't, the story starts counting the seconds until you're punished for it. But disabled people know that stopping isn't failure. Stopping often is strategy. Rest isn't laziness. Rest is survival for a lot of disabled people. I'm gonna out myself. I remember I went to bed at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't wake up until 2:30 the next day. I slept for over 10 hours? 12 hours? 10, 12 hours. Because my body was just so tired it couldn't keep going. Now, an able-bodied person hears this and they think, damn girl, you're lazy. I told my doctor this and she was like, well, you know, you're getting real close to needing to get your next infusion. Your body is just capitalizing on all the rest it can get because the medication takes a lot out of you. I know, I talk about my multiple sclerosis so much, I'm so sorry. It's almost like people don't know what the fuck it is. But that's the problem, right? People don't know what disability is. They only know what they see on movies and TV screens, and that's usually the extremely watered down version of it. Like I said, rest is survival for people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. This is one of the biggest differences between able-bodied survival fantasy and disabled survival reality. In a lot of horror, survival means pushing past the limits of the body. It means ignoring pain, staying awake, running on pure adrenaline, bleeding through your shirt, limping dramatically, but still somehow being able to keep pace with literally everybody else. I don't know how we think that works, but we're not. No, that's not. That's not how that works. The body is treated as an obstacle the hero can overcome through willpower. But chronic illness doesn't work like that. You can't always willpower your way through a flare. You cannot positive think your way out of a neurological condition. You can't grit your teeth until your blood sugar stabilizes. You can't inspire your immune system into behaving. You can't always keep going just because the music swells dramatically and the sousaphone man finally shut the fuck up for this horror movie. Sometimes if you keep going, you don't get to become heroic. You become sicker. Sometimes pushing through means losing the next 3 days, or the next week, or the next month. Sometimes it means a full season goes by. I got sick. I pushed so hard one time, I had to take a whole month off because my body was like, girl, I don't know what we did, but we're not doing it again. Sometimes it means starting up a brand new flare-up for your condition. And a flare-up leads to hospitalization, and hospitalization can lead to a permanent worsening of your condition if you're not careful. Sometimes the bravest and smartest thing a person can do is stop before their body forces them to. And you wanna know what? Horror hates that. Horror hates that so fucking much. It hates it so much. Because horror demands motion and chase scenes, and the body becoming pure momentum and fighting off your monster, your attacker, and it's a lot. I like horror. If I'm being honest, horror is one of my favorite genres. Wrote a whole damn book in the horror genre. It's just a lot all the time. Because the Backrooms intensifies this, so that way their horror becomes spatial. The space around you is the horror. The only possible goal is literally movement. Keep walking, find a door, find a turn, find an exit, escape the hallway, escape the room, escape the fluorescent maze that is super annoying. Somehow find an elevator that works. I do not understand the fascination with the Backrooms and these elevators that don't work. Like, if you don't want to do an elevator, just don't put it in. You don't have to. I don't understand why we feel the need for this stupid elevator. Anyway. What happens when your body can't keep paying the cost of movement? What happens when every hallway costs something? That's the line I keep coming back to with the Backrooms. Every hallway costs something. Some people, it costs time. And time, I guess, is fine for some people, but for other people, it just is pain and breath and balance and consciousness and the next day of their life. It's the next time that they have to go to the hospital. And horror rarely understands that. Horror understands injury. I need to stress that, right? Horror understands injury. It understands someone breaking an ankle and slowing the group down. It understands a wound, a limp, a traumatic bandage that apparently never gets bloody after the first time we see it be put on or changed, but whatever. A body that is temporarily damaged but somehow narratively useful. This is what horror has always leaned to. But chronic illness is different. Chronic illness is not always cinematic. It doesn't always arrive with blood. It doesn't always announce itself in a way that characters can even see. There's a reason why invisible disabilities are a thing. Looking at somebody, if you don't immediately know something's wrong with them, and there is nothing immediately wrong with them, you don't clock them as disabled until you actually look and they tell you, and then you just wave it away because, well, you can't be that sick. You don't look it. Oh, I'm sorry, let me hop in my magical fucking yellow submarine and we'll go from there. What? Anyway. Chronic illness doesn't resolve by the third act. It's not rewarded bravery with a magic cure. And in fact, a lot of disabled and chronically ill people hate the magical cure-all thing because what was the point then? You might as well just let them alone. Sometimes you get to be brave and you still get to be sick. Sometimes you do everything right and you're still sick. Sometimes survival isn't about escaping. Survival for some people is just maintenance. And maintenance is not the kind of survival horror people usually know how to film because they don't understand what chronic illness is. And it's very apparent in the way people talk about it. There's another reason the Backrooms work so well as a chronic illness horror. Because chronic illness often begins like a no-clip. People always no-clip into the Backrooms. One day you're standing in the world you recognize, the ordinary world, the one everybody else agrees is real, gotta pay your taxes, and you hate the IRS, and you think your government is a little bit of shit. You know it. You know the rules, you know your body, you know what tired means, you know what pain means, you know how far you can walk, how long you can work, how much sleep will fix you, how much effort costs you, you know where the exits are because you're still living inside the version of reality that makes sense. And then you know clip. Something changes. And maybe it's slowly or maybe it's all at once. Maybe it starts with just one symptom. Pain that doesn't leave. A fatigue so deep sleep can't touch it. A tremor in your hand or your leg or your eye twitching forever and ever, amen. Because you're just tired. You're just tired. A strange weakness starts to overtake you. Your heart starts racing. Your stomach turns against you. There's a migraine that keeps coming back, and it's so terrible because it's not even behind your eyes anymore. It feels like it's literally starting at the back of your rib cage. A body that suddenly no longer behaves like the body you remember. Maybe it starts with doctors telling you nothing is wrong while your life gets smaller and smaller around you. And then one day, you finally get a diagnosis. And then it starts with the absence of a diagnosis. But either way, at some point, you realize you're no longer in the same world. Everyone else is still walking through the mall. You're in the backrooms. You are now living in the world that doesn't make sense. The horror has found you. And the cruelest part is that from the outside, you may look like you're still there. People could see you. They could talk to you. They give their advice. That's what they want to call it. They could say they miss the old you. They could tell you to try harder, think positive, better, exercise more, pray more, stretch more, calm down. Get angry, stop researching, stop complaining, stop making illness your whole personality. Stop, blah, 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 blah. But they're not where you are. They don't hear the buzzing lights the way you do. They don't feel the carpet pulling at their feet like you do. They don't understand why every hallway costs something. And because they can't understand it, they start blaming you for not escaping fast enough. This is one of the most painful parts about becoming chronically ill. The illness is not the only horror. The other horror is how quickly everyone starts looking for the morality of it. I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. Before I got officially diagnosed, I remember that I was outside talking to coworkers in the outside smoking area, chatting with friends. And I remember I got told a really funny joke. And I tilted my head back to laugh. And then I realized very suddenly I was in the bushes looking up at the sky. I had no memory of landing in the bush, but all of them were concerned for me because I had just toppled backwards. I don't even remember what the joke was that made me laugh so hard. That's the worst part. It's part of the pre-sickness before I got diagnosed. The year of my diagnosis, I have said before, I have no memory of because I was in so much pain. But the pre-diagnosis, I remember very clearly of my body and me were not friends for a very long time. And when you're in your 20s and you've been healthy your whole life, you kind of don't think about being sick because you're in your 20s. You're 40 feet high and bulletproof. Nothing can touch you. And then I got told something did touch me. My body decided that itself was a terrible contagion that must be destroyed at all cost. So it was fighting itself. A lot of people started looking for the morality of it. Not my immediate family. Your immediate family doesn't tend to do that. But other people, co-workers, friends of friends, things like that. All of a sudden it was, did you eat wrong? Did you exercise enough? Did you stress yourself out? Maybe you thought too negatively. Did you manifest it? Did you just want attention? Did you fight hard enough to get better? Did you stop trying to get better? The body breaks, and instead of grieving with you, the world starts cross-examining you like you're on trial. And horror does this too. Horror loves to have a reason for the reason. Well, for the reason. Someone opened the wrong door. That's the reason. Someone read the wrong book. That's the reason. Someone ignored the warning. That's the reason. Someone went into the basement. You never go into the basement. Everybody knows that. There's a reason you don't go into the basement. Someone broke the rules. Everybody knows that. There's a reason why that's a rule, to never break the rules. Someone sinned. Someone always sins. There's a million reasons for that. Someone invited the monster in. Their reasons aren't really important, but they did. Horror often feels safer when suffering has a cause, because if suffering has a cause, then the audience can pretend they could avoid it. I wouldn't go into the attic. I wouldn't go into the basement. I wouldn't call out to somebody. What if I was home alone? I wouldn't have gotten sick if I was anybody else. But chronic illness is terrifying because sometimes there is no satisfying cause. There's no reason. Sometimes the body simply changes. There's no moral lesson, no ritual to reverse, no curse to break. There's no exit. And people hate that. Because if it can happen for no reason, then it can happen to them too. Blame is a kind of superstition. If we blame something that somebody did, then that absolves them of ever having it happen to them. If people can prove you caused your illness, then they can believe they are protected from it. Make the sign of the cross and give me 10 Hail Marys. If you do it enough times, you'll never get cancer. You might have cancer. The Hail Marys don't save you. You got sick because you were careless. You stayed sick because you were weak. You did not recover because you didn't want it badly enough. You didn't fight hard enough. It's cruel, but it's also comforting to the people saying it, because it means sickness is not random. It means disability is not waiting under the floor like a very particularly aggressive set of ants that are hell-bent on getting into your house. It means they cannot no-clip into it too. They wouldn't fall into the backrooms. You must have gone looking for it. They wouldn't have this happen to them. The healthy world sees illness to be deserved, because undeserved illness means no one is safe. If sickness can happen for no reason, then health is not proof of virtue. Health is luck, and luck is bullshit. And a lot of people would rather blame the sick than admit they're lucky. That's why the backrooms are such a powerful metaphor. You do not enter them by making a grand choice. You fall into them by accident. You no-clip out of normal life. And once you're there, the people outside cannot really understand where you went. Just one day you walked into a wall and didn't come back out again. And they might not even believe the place exists if you tell them about it. They think you're exaggerating. They think you should have found the exit by now. They think that if you were stronger, smarter, calmer, more disciplined, more grateful, more positive, then you would be back. You wouldn't be sick anymore. But you're not lost because you failed. You're lost because the world changed and no one gave you a map. And in all honesty, that's probably the part where people seem to get confused. Everybody has a map. That's not really a problem. The problem is that sometimes your map is updated in real time, and then you get told, oh, yours didn't. I heard a joke once and I thought it was kind of funny. The only gang that will always accept you no matter what you do is the disability gang. Doesn't matter why you got here, doesn't matter how it happened. We've been waiting our whole life for you. There's no real initiation that needs to happen. It's just a thing that happens. And that's all it is. I think that's kind of sad, but it's also kind of funny. Horror has always had a disability problem, if I'm going to be very blunt. Disabled people have often been used as monsters, victims, warnings, metaphors, or tragic symbols for some reason. A scar means they're evil. Evil! Okay, why? A limp means danger. Something's wrong with them. You can start limping too if you run or walk too much. A facial difference becomes visual shorthand for corruption. One of my nephews actually has vitiligo, so he's got a little white patch starting on his cheek. It kind of looks like a turkey that you draw when you're in kindergarten. Kind of looks like a hand. We think it's funny. He always wants to go as Two-Face from Batman for Halloween. He's actually really good at it. We're very proud of him. Very, very aspiring actor. Madness becomes monstrosity. Madness is usually shorthand for somebody who has a terrible chemical imbalance in their brain, and with some medication and a lot of therapy they'll be fine. But sure, whatever, go off, Jen. Disfigurement becomes punishment. Yeah, okay, and if you go flying through the windshield of a car and wrap yourself around a tree, you'd be disfigured too, but, you know, whatever. It's not punishment, it's just bad luck. Disability becomes the thing the audience is supposed to fear becoming, when they could become disabled very quickly and easily on their own, but we don't have time to talk about that. And even when disabled characters are not monsters, they're often treated as doomed. Doomed, I say, doomed! From the narrative. Just right out the gate. They're there to die first. Because of course they are. They're there to slow everybody down. Because apparently everybody's an asshole and won't take a couple seconds to just take a break to take a breather. Okay. They're there to prove how cruel the world is. You do not need a disabled character to prove that. The world is doing that for free without having any help. They're there to inspire the able-bodied characters. How? How are we making that inspiration? I'm so curious. I would like you to Crayola Crayon Color explain it to me. They're there to be cured. That's really ableist of you and very cruel to put out that something is so wrong that people need to be cured because it's making you uncomfortable. But sure, okay. They're there to be pitied. Yeah, you can have a fat middle finger for that one, my guy. What horror rarely lets disabled be is ordinary. I'm being serious. Disabled people are not allowed to just be ordinary. Not magical, not inspirational, not monstrous, and most assuredly not symbolic. Just ordinary people with ordinary needs trying to survive a situation that is already impossible, divorced from the fantastical, weird reality of the Backrooms. And unfortunately, that absence matters. Because when horror imagines a world with no disabled survivors, it is not always because disabled people could not survive. Sometimes it's because the story never bothered to imagine disabled survival. And disabled survival looks different from the survival horror usually rewarded. It can be slower, more careful, more communal. Most people don't understand that a lot of outings for disabled people are heavily planned because the world in regular mode doesn't accommodate. So a world like the Backrooms would be a death sentence. And horror like the Backrooms for disabled people would be more dependent on information and pacing, mutual aid, real life adaptation, and knowing the body before the body reaches its breaking point. Disabled people are not strangers to hostile environments. We already know how to ask. Is there seating? Is there shade? Is there an elevator, an escalator? Do we have a backup plan? Can I leave early? Is there a bathroom? What happens if my symptoms spike? What happens if my mobility changes? What happens if the person I came with ditches me? What happens when the building is a lie? Because they said that it's accessible, but how accessible did they actually make it? This is survival knowledge. It doesn't sound like it, but when every single thing costs you something to go outside, it is survival. It is just not the kind of survival knowledge horror usually glorifies. Because horror likes the lone survivor, and disability often teaches interdependence. People that are disabled have multiple disabled friends because, well, who else was gonna listen to you bitch and complain about all the things that you're gonna bitch and complain about? If I may be so blunt, there is a theory called the spoons theory. The spoons theory is relatively simple. Every single thing you do costs a spoon. The spoon in this metaphor is energy. The spoon drawer in this metaphor is you. So, every single thing you do costs you a spoon. I think it is important for people to understand that the spoons are not infinite. And this means that people that are disabled are not doing things because we're lazy or we just don't want to. It's because if I use this spoon today, I will not have this spoon tomorrow. And that's the thing that a lot of people just don't understand. Because they just never have to deal with it. In a world of able-bodied people and only like 2% of the population the world over are disabled, it makes sense why people don't understand it. Because horror likes able bodies, horror likes speed, horror likes silence, horror likes the body that's pushed past the point of no return for pain, horror likes the fantasy of total independence that you alone will survive this travesty, but disability doesn't allow for that. Disability often teaches pacing and often requires communication, and disabled people learn very quickly that pain is information. Disability exposes that total independence was always a myth for some people, and when you tell this to the people that don't have to have this reality, they just straight up don't believe you. No one survives alone, not really. Able-bodied people just get to pretend that they do. The Backrooms become much more interesting when viewed through this lens. Because if the Backrooms are a world without care, then the disabled survivor would not simply ask, how do I get out? First of all, most disabled people would not be stupid enough to go wandering into areas that look like it's a total train wreck. But that's not really the point. They would ask different questions. How do I conserve energy? How do I mark where I've been? How do I make real rest possible? How do I avoid sensory overload? How do I keep track of symptoms? Find or create support, share information. How do I survive if escape is not immediate? How do I live inside the impossible without pretending a body is not real? That is a very different kind of horror story, and honestly, it might be a better one. But that's not really what the conversation is. The Backrooms are a very specific horror made by very specific restraints. And it's not me trying to be a downer. It's me asking a question that I feel like other people need to actually seriously consider. Would a loved one that is disabled be able to survive your hypothetical fantasy of the Backrooms? You need to seriously consider that. The Backrooms are also frightening because they feel like capitalism without people, if that makes sense. Not nature or wilderness, not grand ancient ruins with a curse, just commerce, work, retail, Architecture designed for consumption, movement, management, and control. A furniture store is already an uncanny space because it imitates home without being home. It gives you living rooms with no one actually living inside of it. Beds no one sleeps in, kitchens no one cooks in, lamps beside books no one reads, fake plants that never die because they were never alive to begin with. It is a still photograph of the potential of domesticity within the home, and then it asks you, can you imagine your home like this? That's a little dystopian. A furniture showroom is domesticity emptied of intimacy. It is the image of comfort without actually being comforting. So when a backroom story begins in or near a commercial space like that, it makes sense. Because the backrooms are also fake interiors. They're rooms without lives. They're architecture pretending to be familiar while refusing every human need imaginable. The reasons why the backrooms can't decide what it is because it is a memory of a memory of a memory. And at some point, nobody actually remembers the memory. I'm going to say this because I feel that people definitely don't know. Your memories are fickle. That is not me being facetious. It is me being very realistic. Unless the memory is something extraordinarily important or traumatic, your memories of a certain event don't actually add up. And you remembering your memories also makes it so that way that memory is now a copy of what it was, because you are pulling up archival footage that you actually can't really remember. This is the reason why a lot of people sometimes when they see old photographs of events that happened, they laugh, is because they're like, I don't even remember this. No, you do. You just remember the memory of a memory. For a long time, I thought in my childhood I had really short hair. I thought I was constantly rocking like bangs and everything. Actually, finally had to make a collage for a family reunion that we're having later on in the year. My hair has always been long. My hair has always been long. I didn't actually start getting short hair until middle school. That's the point though, right? My memory of my childhood was very specific to a hairstyle I had for 1 year. It wasn't like that all the time, but my memory was convinced that it was definitely that. The backrooms are memories of memories, and they're not even coherent memories. They're just they're faded photographs of memories that most people don't actually have, because most new generations cannot possibly remember a time before the mall was a ghost town. That's what makes them feel so modern. The backrooms do not have to invent hell. They just remove the workers, the customers, the exploitation from places we already know, and then for good measure, take the divorce and the exit too. I didn't say that right. You know what I mean. They are the dead mall made infinite. The office after work lost meaning. The showroom after comfort became a product, and the hallway after the exit forgot to exist. And this is where disability and capitalism are deeply connected, because capitalism loves the productive body. The body that can work and stand and perform wellness and keep going. The body that can be scheduled, measured, optimized, disciplined, and replaced. A chronically ill body disrupts that fantasy. A disabled body always disrupts that fantasy. Chronically ill people ruin the illusion too. A body that needs rest, care, time, accommodations, softness, medication, flexibility, and help disrupts the idea that people exist to be efficient. And horror often smuggles the same logic into survival. Who deserves to live? The one who keeps moving, the one who adapts fastest, the one who does not slow down, the one who needs the least. Look at me, horror protagonists cry. I'm special. I deserve it more because I'm me. Everybody else had a flaw that I didn't have, and I got to survive. What kind of worldview is that? Human beings are not designed to be alone. We are not designed to do half of the things that horror says we can do, even though we can do them. Yes, most people can in fact jump across a ravine, assuming the ravine is small enough to jump across. Yes, most people can run, assuming that it's within a reasonable distance, but they suffer for it. Even people that run marathons eventually have to collapse at the finish line. What kind of story decides that needing care makes you less survivable? What kind of story makes rest into weakness and then calls it realistic? The Backrooms expose the cruelty of that logic because they create a world where no amount of productivity saves you. You can walk forever and somehow still be lost. You can keep going and actually go nowhere all at the same time. You can obey the demand to move until your body gives out and the hallway will not care. And that is the nightmare. Not that you failed to be strong enough, that the strength was never the point. The system was unwinnable. And I think that we as modern audiences do actually need to sometimes contend with the fact that, we do need to sometimes contend with the fact that horror is designed to make able-bodied people feel extraordinarily alone and sketchy about the environments they live in, but disabled people don't need a fantastical worldview to think like that because we already live in a pretty sketchy worldview. We live in reality. And in all honesty, I understand that most people that live in reality don't have to have all these constraints that I literally just listed. But you have to understand that that reality is not optional for people with disabilities, with chronic illnesses. So when you ask, would you survive the Backrooms? I think we have to be careful because the question already contains a trap built into it. It assumes survival is an individual achievement. It assumes the environment is neutral. It assumes every person begins with the same tools and the same body and the same chance of being able to do stuff. It assumes the only difference between survival and death is character. But disabled people know better. The environment is never neutral. The body is never abstract. Need is never weakness. And survival is just about willpower is a super catchy phrase to put on a bumper sticker, but it's not realistic. The better question is not, would disabled people survive the Backrooms? The better question is, what kind of body does this world imagine surviving? And I need you to be very honest with yourself, if not with me. Would you, listening to this video, actually survive the Backrooms? Would you be able to go through all of the terrible things that seem to parade themselves around in this narrative? I can say with confidence, the Backrooms stress me out, and it has nothing to do with the monsters or the lore or anything else. It is the infinite, never-ending architecture that freaks me and stresses me out. Because between stairs that go nowhere, hallways that loop back into each other, the constant fluorescent lighting, and I'm just gonna say it, every single video I've ever watched of the Backrooms makes me feel like the air conditioning is either cranked up to 50 or it has the terrible reality of being at your grandparents' house and it's 90 degrees even though it's the middle of summer. There's no in between because that's what the environment is saying that these places are like. And it freaks me out because that reality isn't good for me. I don't need a monster for the Backrooms to be freaky. I just need them to be open, never-ending space with impossible architecture that reminds me of some avant-garde architecture student that never got the memo of, nah fam, that's not how that works. People have to be able to go here and there and everywhere. But that's not really what it is, because Every horror world imagines a very specific body. The slasher imagines a body that can run. The zombie apocalypse imagines a body that can fight and scavenge and go without medical infrastructure for some reason. A haunted house imagines a body that can hear whispers, climb stairs, flee down hallways, and stay awake literally all night. The survival thriller imagines a body that can endure hunger and injury and exposure and exhaustion until the story is done with it. And the Backrooms imagines a body that can walk forever. But no real body can walk forever. That's the lie. The Backrooms do not just punish disabled bodies. They punish the act of having a body at all. Hunger, thirst, pain, fatigue, confusion, sensory overload, the need to sleep or sit or know where you are, the need for other people, fear. The Backrooms hate all of that. Like they do. It works really, really well for a horror concept, and I need to stress that for a horror concept, the Backrooms is interesting. It's fun and dynamic. The actual application of the Backrooms, though, makes me uncomfortable, and I think that if people thought about it beyond the hype of it, beyond the, oh boy, the lore of the Backrooms, they would be a little uncomfortable with it too. The Backrooms actually doesn't need a monster to be scary. The Backrooms just needs to exist in the way that it does. The impossible architecture and everything that goes with it. The Backrooms hates people, if I'm being honest. Even able-bodied people, it hates. They're a world built against embodiment, and that's why they're such a good disability horror text, even when disability is not centered in the story. Because disability makes the invisible rules visible to people. It reveals what kind of body that story expected. It reveals that the normal survivor was never universal. It reveals that horror has been quietly depending on an impossible body the whole time. A body that never needs, never stops, never becomes sick. A body that never no-clips out of health into a life it did not choose. And in all honesty, if more people honestly looked at the Backrooms from the lens of somebody who can't do half of the things that are paraded around inside of Backrooms games or Backrooms movies, it's actually a lot more interesting and it's a lot more unsettling to think about. Because the Backrooms, when you're an able-bodied person, basically make you go, how does anybody get through this? It gives you a very simple taste of being disabled. How does anybody get through this? How does anybody understand these stupid rules? Who designed a world like this? That's what literally every disabled person thinks and gets aggravated about. Who designed a world like this? Nobody would want a world like this. But that's kind of the point. You're not supposed to survive. And it's a really good microcosm of a disability. The Backrooms are not just scary because they're empty. They're scary because they're familiar. They're the mall after the mall died, the office after all the workers left, the furniture store after comfort becomes a performance, the hallway when the exit disappears. They are the commercial ruins younger generations inherited, stretched into infinity and lit by fluorescent bulbs that never burn out. But when we look at the Backrooms through disability and chronic illness, they become even more frightening. Because the Backrooms are not only a maze, they're a world without care. No rest, no access, no medicines, no help. No way to say, my body cannot do this, and have the world answer, then we will make another way. That is the nightmare disabled people recognize, not because our lives are horror stories. In all honesty, our lives are just a little bit aggravating with all the red tape that we sometimes have to go through. But they're not horror stories. They're not. But because we know what it means to live in a world that treats access as optional, a world that treats rest as weakness, and a world that treats illness as personal failure. A world that treats needing help as a character flaw. We know what it means to enter a building and realize the building never expected us. We know what it means to become sick and watch people search for ways to make it our fault, or worse, for people we love and who love us back so terribly much sit there and say, no, we'll find a cure. It'll be okay. Things can go back to the way they were. It's a nice sentiment, but after a little bit, it starts to become a little aggravating. I understand that you, my loved one in this hypothetical scenario, would like me to be cured to go back to the way I was. I've been sick for so long, I actually don't really remember what it was like to not be sick. And I don't think I would recognize it even if I suddenly got a magic cure for it. And I think more people need to be able to understand that it's not that we wouldn't be grateful for a cure, it's you're asking something that in our memory has faded, because the sickness has now taken over the entire conversation, and you, who are not sick, have the luxury of not being sick. We know what it means to fall out of a normal life and be told we should have found the exit by now. That's the true horror of the Backrooms as a disabled metaphor. Not just that you fall out of the world, but that once you fall, everyone still inside the world starts explaining why it must have been your fault. Horror keeps asking, would you survive? But maybe the better question is, did this world ever intend for you to survive it? Because if survival requires a body that never hurts, never tires, never needs, never changes, stops, or anything else, then the problem is not the body. The problem is the world. And in the Backrooms, the world finally stops pretending that you have a chance. The monster is not only somewhere down the hall. The hallway itself is the monster. And above all else, I think that we as people in a modern audience should be able to talk about this and not be so freaked out about it. I understand that that is a lot to ask of people that are not sick. I understand that that is a lot to ask of people who are sick. I understand that this is a little bit of a annoying thing to watch a person wander through the back rooms, checking every nook and cranny because, well, what if this is the way? What if that's the way? What if there is no way out? What if the back rooms are designed exactly as they are supposed to be designed? A never-ending maze with no Minotaur wandering around it, and no Ariadne to give you the magic yarn that gets you out. I understand that that is a little bit of a aggravating concept to ask someone to consider, and I'm sorry that it's a little bit of an aggravating concept for somebody to consider. But that's all I ever think about when I think about the Backrooms. I don't really care about the lore, or the monsters, or the pool rooms, or the office building with the wet carpet. Why is it wet carpet? I care about the fact that this world sounds fun, but I don't want to play in it. Because I know that I wouldn't be able to play for more than maybe 15 minutes. And then it would ruin the fun for other people. I understand that that is not fair for me to ruin your fun. And I'm not trying to. If you enjoy the Backrooms, you enjoy the Backrooms. And I wouldn't want you to not enjoy the things you enjoy. But I want you to understand my perspective from it, and I feel that that is a very important conversation for people to be able to have with each other. In order to bridge the gap between the people who are sick and the people who aren't sick, I think being able to understand why is the biggest battle. But that's just my opinion. That's just how I feel. I absolutely love the Backrooms as a concept divorced from the monsters. I think it's funny that some of the monsters that people put into the Backrooms are honestly a little silly. And they sound stupid, actually divorced from the concept of the Backrooms, but it's fun. The games are fun when you're not being chased by a monster and you get to explore impossible architecture that literally makes no sense. It's fun. And I think more people need to understand that, yes, I'm talking about this from the viewpoints of I wouldn't be able to survive a world like this. And in all honesty, that's a decent conversation to start having with people. But I can also admit that the backrooms are fun. They're always fun. I just wish more people would be honest about the fact that the backrooms probably wouldn't let most people survive in it. Which is probably 99% of the horror. But we might want to stop lying about the fact that even you, as an able-bodied person, definitely won't survive this. So people that are disabled that watch these games, all they ever seem to think about, or at least all I've ever seemed to think about, was not with all these stairs, and not with all this water, not with all this everything in it. You're stressing me out just thinking about it. But that's a personal opinion. And I think that other disabled people, if they manage to get this far into a video, would probably agree with me. It's all fun and games until you actually consider that, well, I might actually one day have to deal with a place that's designed like an idiot designed it. And then you remember, no, we do that all the time. It's actually just annoying after a while. But that's not a bad thing. Just food for thought. Have an amazing rest of your day. I hope you guys are doing well. Bye.